What's up, guys? Josh from Strength Side. This is a conversation that I had with my buddy Kellen from Movement Parallels Life. Me and Kellen we met on Instagram actually through kind of like a mutual friend, and the more we followed each other and chatted a little bit, the more we found that we kind of share the same values, and we are just trying to share and accomplish the similar things. So I suggest you guys check him out. Check out his YouTube channel. It's Movement Parallels Life. There will be a link in the description, and he's doing a lot of cool things to kind of blend mobility and strength and movement all together. Our convo consists a lot of how you can use your movement practice to as kind of a accelerator to growth, to self-growth, and to keep growing through life, and to kind of just navigate this crazy life that we are all living. So I hope you guys enjoy. I had a lot of fun doing this. If you do enjoy it, leave a comment. Let me know. Maybe we'll do more cool combos like this in the future with people that are doing things a little bit differently in the fitness industry, right? I think that's what's exciting to me, and hopefully that's what's exciting to you too.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to when I'm sorting through these concepts and information, like I really look inward to figure out what feels right to me.
Right.
Right. But I think it's also, it's a process of collecting data points. You've got to expose yourself to other viewpoints. You've got to run it through your algorithm and just kind of see how stuff hits you, and see if it resonates or not. And if there's an opportunity to tweak it. You know, sometimes we might like take in some new information and then like it doesn't feel right. We want to reject it. But if you package it a different way, if you look at it from a different angle, it makes sense. So it's so much of it lies in the presentation and being open to new ideas regardless of, and being able to like strip the concept away from the packaging. And I think to talking about Jordan Peterson, that's kind of like with all these biblical references and the kind of the social context and like the things that he's been in the spotlight for, it's like, right. I kind of insulated myself from that and kind of saw, well, okay, like this person is very well spoken, has great ideas. So I don't think he's using religion as like, as overly using it as dogma, right? He's just providing examples from a specific lens. So it's like interesting to make that distinction.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I think like what you were saying, like how the information is presented, and I think like I've found for myself that sometimes something will trigger something in me, and I'll be like, oh, like I like this idea, but maybe I just wasn't ready to fully take that in, and then later on, right down the
Totally.
down the path of time, like I come back to it and I'm like, oh, like now I kind of understand this more because I think, I've grown as a person and matured, and I'm just ready to take in that information more and kind of like make it a part of me, right?
Absolutely. I think in creating, making videos, making content, understanding that concept is huge. Like I'm just going to share what's currently in my universe. Like what am I thinking on? What am I practicing? And offering it up and knowing that it's going to land for some people, it's not going to land for other people. But just because it doesn't land doesn't mean that that person might not grasp onto it later. So it's less like that understanding that the best we can do is just kind of speak our truth and what feels right, and people can come around, leave the door open.
Yeah. In a sense, you're just kind of planting seeds, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
Some people are ready to take that. Some people it'll still be there, but they might not come back to it for a little while. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I like that.
And in that, it's like there's no need you don't need to be on the defensive, or you don't need to be constantly justifying what you're teaching, or This is just, here's where I'm at in my point in development, and I'm just going to share it with the hopes that it does some good for someone. But there's so much bickering and like nitpicking that goes on the internet. That's just how it is. But I think that understanding that piece has really been crucial for me to just like not even worry about that and just focus on sharing and trusting the information will get to whoever it needs to get to.
Yeah, totally. And I think that when you're on some side of whatever path you are on, like probably the best thing that can happen to you is to find like-minded people. You know what I mean? So if you're digging into some of this and then you come across one of your videos and then like you add someone into your little circle who is kind of on the same path as you. And I really think this just leads to like a spiral effect of like, then you find somebody else, right? And then like your whole universe starts to change because you're surrounded by all of this, like, hopefully a positive a way of going about things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's this acceptance, and I think oftentimes we're searching for the answers and the way, and as soon as you understand that it's just different strokes for different folks, like everyone's got their own story, their own past experiences that have brought them into their current iteration, and beyond that, it's like so you don't really need to judge it. It's just try to find the people that you connect with. It's like you posted on or you just made a video on you said you're reading Tribe.
Oh yeah, Seth Godin, yeah.
Yeah, so it's finding your tribe, and if you're like you get to a certain point, stepping up and taking responsibility for kind of being the beacon for your tribe,
right.
putting up the flag and like welcoming other people in.
Yeah, that's a cool way to think about it. So actually I wanted to ask you about or I wanted you to speak on a little bit about it was why I hit you up the other day on Instagram was you posted a song with Mac Miller's, right? Rest in peace, Mac Miller.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how I'm paraphrasing, but something about like just this music in my training, years ago is that's all I really had. And I like, man, I related to it a lot because I've been like through that process, and that song that you posted, I was like really into it too, like a couple of years back or whenever it was out. So yeah. Can you expand on that?
It was crazy because I woke up to that news, and it hit me harder than I expected, and primarily because like that generation or that class of artists, it was like Mac Miller, Kid Cudi, Drake, J. Cole, Wale. I like that group of artists was just so I guess supportive for me. As I was transitioning I'm trying to find my way in the fitness industry, try to figure out how to be a trainer. What does that mean? What does that look like? Try to transition out of like college life into the real world, figure out what does that look like, and how to like retain my individuality and just the things that make me. So I really feel like those artists really embodied that. Childish Gambino, another one in there. Just this embodiment of like being true to yourself and breaking the mold. Like those guys, and especially Mac Miller, like kind of being easily perceived as a certain way, and then being, but just making dope music and being able to continue to grow and push the envelope and change his expression. So for me at that time, I was trying to get out of the typical meathead bro gym life. I felt like there was something more that I was looking for, but I didn't have anyone to show me the way. And what it was just like being willing to let go of what I knew and being willing to let go of my comfort zone to just get outside and just start. And so I was saying, like, at that time I didn't have a great relationship with the people that I was working with at the gym. I was living in a new area and I didn't have a lot of social support or friends. So movement was my therapy for sure for like the second time in my life, maybe second or third period in my life. So I would just go outside and like, it would just be me wandering around the neighborhood with my headphones. And, I totally remember just listening to The Best Day Ever and just having a huge smile on my face. And regardless of any other stress or uncertainty that was going on in my life, when I would be out moving and running and jumping and climbing and listening to some good tunes, and for those moments, nothing else really mattered. And when I look back, when I woke up to that news, it just immediately brought me back to that point in my life, just like we were just saying. Like, I was so vivid what an anchor that was to where I was at that moment. I just had to reflect on it and write a little something about it because I had not listened to Mac Miller a ton, but it took me right back to that place. And then now I've been going back to some of his recent stuff and seeing like, oh shit, this is really cool to see how he evolved from that kid to a more refined, reflective artist. And it's just a shame that he was obviously like dealing with some things and, it played out like it played out. But yeah, that's kind of the background on that.
Man, yeah, that's really cool. It's funny, like all the artists that you mentioned is like, I guess, yeah, we came up listening to the same type of music and had totally the same effect on me. Like you mentioned Kid Cudi, and I'm a huge Kid Cudi fan. I think just more so because like it was one of the artists that I listened to that was actually talking about real stuff he was going through, and it just it gave me a chance to be like, okay, like, yeah, I feel some stuff too, and to just be real about that, and to not try to pretend that everything's perfect. And yeah, so yeah, and like you mentioned, Childish Gambino too, just like really conscious stuff of like making you think about the world and about your place in the world. And I had the same experience of kind of transitioning from a place of training my body in a way of more so punishing it and just really wanting success for no real reason, to then going into this more conscious movement approach and more so getting playful and actually feeling my body and trying to eventually get to a place of like, I want to train my body because I love my body. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's really what I took from that post was like, I remember times of just music being like the fuel there and just feeling really good. And like you mentioned, like all the other stuff kind of drops away. And it's just feeling your body, this music fueling your experience. So, yeah, I really related to that, man. That's cool.
There was something about like those vibes, and like to me, those artists, they represented a deviation from the typical like image of what a hip hop artist is supposed to look like, with like wearing jerseys and chains and talking about the same played out shit. And this class was like starting to do something different, and all in different ways. And I also noticed, like, as I started to embrace this new style of movement and training, my taste in music changed, where I was using movement or music before as a way to supplement, almost like push myself harder through this very aggressive style of training. Which I won't say was bad, but it was definitely overused on my end. So I was listening to a lot harder stuff, hyper masculine, just fucking crushing shit. And as I started to open myself up embrace more of myself and who I am as a full person within my movement practice. That started to get me to open up my taste in music, and things just started to recalibrate. There was a softening. There was space to talk about, not just like the aggressive side and the hard style, but all like the vulnerability and the lightheartedness and the playfulness, and there's room for all of that. And to see like there was room for that in hip hop, like almost gave me permission to bring more of that into, there's space for more of that in my movement and just my life in general.
Right. Yeah. That's really cool. Do you know who Bon Iver is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's crazy because like I love putting on Bon Iver in moving, whereas same as you, like years ago, oh, that'd be crazy, right? Like I gotta be something hardcore. And people will be like, this is kind of strange music to work out to, but I'm like, no, this is like really making me feel and like you said, soften the body a little bit and be able to go into those, more so like those parts of movement and fitness, where I'm trying to go these days rather than the past, right?
Yeah,
man. That's really cool. You actually just, like what you said made me actually kind of realize that's the same path that I took, right? And I didn't really have the conscious awareness there, but yeah, I took that same path. That's cool.
Yeah, instead of like forcing our way through it, it's just a different, when you are focused on health and you're focused on longevity and you're focused on deepening your relationship with your body, then all these older habits, you just start to, the awareness increases and you start to look at what you used to do and start to realize like that's not it. It served a purpose. It had its purpose and its point in time, but it's time to evolve and time to grow. And no longer do I need to use, supplements, to push myself to the next level or whatever the fuck that means. It's just more about continuing to keep this dialogue going with my body, checking in, and having a practice that's broad enough to adapt to meet me wherever I'm at on any given day. Like, I don't need to hype, if I'm not feeling like I need to push it and hype it up, then we're going to soften. And, I could still do heavy deadlifts listening to a podcast or something soft. It's not that like external crutch or motivator. It all comes from within.
Right. Yeah. And it sounds like you're basically just describing the name of your brand, right? Movement Parallels Life. Like, is that what it's basically about?
Yeah, definitely. Over the years, in the absence of maybe having a lot of like answers or like guidance, mentorship, support, learning a ton of life lessons through movement, which is something I was just spending so much time on. I naturally am a reflective person and just started like connecting some dots, and that's how Movement Parallels Life came to kind of be my MO. Like whenever I'm learning in movement, there's going to be a parallel. I'm going to show up in my training very similar to how I'm showing up in life. And if I just stop and take a moment to observe and think on it, like maybe it won't come right away, but there's going to be a connection there. And, I love, that's a daily practice for me. And I love starting to explore that with the people that I come in contact with as I, collect stories and hear where other people are coming from. But there's always a tie there. How we do one thing is how we do all the things.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why people are maybe drawn to watching you, is because you have taken the time to reflect on this process. And, if you never would have taken that time, you could still be back, doing the bro stuff in the gym or whatever. But, people can kind of sense when you're being authentic with yourself and when you're like trying to go deep and see like, what does this all mean? Right. And I think that's what's really important is kind of asking like, like, why are we doing this stuff, right? Like, because there's a reason behind all of it. And once you start getting a little bit more in tune with those reasons of why, then I think that's what evolves your practice and in turn, like, your life experience.
Absolutely. And, we've been having some of these conversations, and now I'm starting to see it, reflected in your content, and I really appreciate the approach. And I'm trying to do a similar thing where it's not about, claiming to have the answers, or or take what we found and push it on other people. It's just an offering. It might start with just raising a question, giving, sending a message, and then holding some space for people to think about what their answer might be. And I really think that's the route that feels right to me. It's this saying that I've really been vibing with over the years, is like, people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And I think that's a lot of the pushback that comes from the overly spiritual or woo-woo, or the overly heady or logic-based arguments. You should be doing this, you should be thinking like this. And there's always going to be a pushback on that, because it's like, don't tell me.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different dynamic when you invite someone to think for themselves. It's not something we're used to in our society. Like, we're used to like looking to the experts and getting the answers. But I think subconsciously we also push back against that sometimes. But we've got the answers that we need. It's just, do we have the space free of distractions to really think our way through it? Do we get support in that process? And I think that, people like you and I are right on the same page in terms of trying to create communities and spaces where that can happen. Certainly a slower process, but I think it's one that opens the door for lasting change.
Sure. Yeah. And I think it's what I see from you and with me is that, it's maybe not the most popular thing, but people that want to dive in, they really get it, and they want to dive in. Like we were talking about tribes, like, it sounds like you're saying, I'm saying, we don't have the answers, but we definitely see that there's a different way to do things. And that's one of my big messages, is that, the shit that's popular, I don't think like it necessarily is the best way to go about things. And I think like young people fall into that because when you're young, you see what's popular. That's the experience that I went through, right? So you're like, I want to do this thing because everybody else is doing it, and I want to be able to be one of the people that's good at doing this thing that everybody else likes. And then over the years, you see like, oh man, like, that's not what it makes you feel good inside, right? Is like striving to impress other people or doing this for other people. Like, I want to do this for me, and I want to create like a life, and I want to create a lifestyle that I enjoy living and that I'm proud of living. And I think I got to the point where like I really want to share that with people as well, because I see how, people are really affected by this, and people can really grow and have their own experience with it. And that's really cool.
Yeah. I think it takes a lot of courage to express yourself, to freely express your individuality, but it serves as such a powerful model for other people. And especially when you're younger, it's all about fitting in. It's all about taking your cues from the external environment, looking around you to figure out how shit is supposed to be. But the older that you get, the more you collect experiences, and you become a little bit more reflective, and you hopefully start tailoring, asking the right questions and tailoring your life to what feels like personal truth. And I just see an opportunity within this vehicle that we're using of movement, see an opportunity to just be more intentional about holding that space, rather than just hoping that evolution happens as a function of time. Just being more deliberate and understanding that everybody's voice has value and deserves to be heard and amplified. But it takes some work. It's not guaranteed. It takes a lot of practice. Just like our movement practice and doing handstands and flows and ring skills and lifts. All these things take practice. It takes equal practice in showing up as your authentic self. And that seems a little counterintuitive, like it should be just easy, but it's not. Like, we're relational creatures, and it takes time to figure out like what our vibe is and how we want to show up. And having a good support network just helps expedite that process.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that. So diving into, like you mentioned, some of the movement skills, handstands, rings, stuff like this. One of the things that I've been finding more and more lately, and we've spoken about this before, is that it's kind of trying to find this healthy balance of like putting your reps in and getting the work in that you need to, but then also like letting yourself play and feel your body a little bit. And I think, like, for me, like, I totally see this of like this kind of like conquer mentality, and then this kind of Eastern, like, more like just be mentality, right? And for me, I found that just trying to find the balance of those is really, really important, because if you just do one of them, like, you're not going to cultivate the whole being that you could, right? So What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that like, this key concept in balance is that it's dynamic in nature, that it's not just like, let's say, physical balance, you're balancing on a rail or something like that. It's not just like, a single point where you're just balanced. You're constantly in the state of balancing. And I would say the same goes for lifestyle and how we're managing that balance between reaching and striving, and then also just allowing and enjoying what is and where we're presently at. It's this constant balance. It's not being complacent, but not being overzealous and overreaching. And I find myself, I'm working on that every day. Like, I definitely lose that balance and reclaim it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and it's all these like ebbs and flows that happen throughout the course of the months and the years. But for me, it's the awareness that helps me recognize when I'm losing the balance. And the quicker that I can realize that I'm losing the balance, the quicker that I can recalibrate and make adjustments. And I think that's been the kind of the defining piece for me getting older, getting more mature, just recognizing when I need to correct the course. As opposed to being, a few years ago, just being really hard-headed and feeling tired, feeling run down, feeling like I'm losing losing some of the joy and some of the energy behind the work that I'm doing, but just continuing to push forward against better judgment. Because why? Because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. I don't know. A lack of awareness, but for me, it's just constantly checking in, and asking the question, like, do I need to make any adjustments right now? Is what I'm doing right now working for me, or could there be a better way to balance? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you find that they get smaller and smaller, right? Like, your extremes start out here, and now as you narrow things down, you get a little bit here. And like you said, like, you're never going to find that balance point. We're always going to be skewing to one side. But but yeah, it becomes easier to recognize when something's a little bit off. And, that's, I really like in like meditation practice when they talk about, like, it's about when you realize that you're going off in thought and then you pull yourself back. And I think that's kind of like what you're describing there is that realization comes a little bit quicker, and that there's just so much power in that, awareness of being like, oh, okay, like I'm doing this, and being real with yourself, right? I think in the past I've caught myself, but I didn't want to be real with myself. I wasn't ready to yeah, just be able to change things up. And I think in the practice and getting older and getting more mature, it's easier to just be real and just be like, what am I after right now, right? Is that thing so important? Probably not.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, for me, along with that has come just the ability to check my ego. And
Yeah.
I think it's okay to lose balance. It's okay to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, releasing some of the need to be perfect, that's not possible to be perfect. But we often really strive to hold on to the balance that we have when we could just let it go, and to be able to roll with the waves and allow the practice, allow life to be imperfect. That's been a piece of it for me. It's like, here I am, I'm off balance. It ain't the first time, and it ain't going to be the last time. So it is what it is.
Right.
I'm going to make my way back, but just because I had a stumble doesn't define me. And so for me, that's been a huge part of making those adjustments, is not having to cling so tightly to where I was, but realize that everything is dynamic. So I'm just going to keep making moves.
Heck yeah. Yeah. I think it's, the Japanese have a term for, I think it's like wabi sabi or something, when, they put like a chip in their ceramic bowl or something like that, that's just supposed to represent that life is imperfection, right?
Oh yeah.
You know that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool concept. And,
yeah, something gains value through imperfection and flaws, and I just think that's so true. It's so, and like the illusion of perfection has a way of turning things to shit, like
right.
other. And it all comes from that attachment and that clinging.
Yeah, and I think that's what can be hard with like social media, like Instagram, is everybody's kind of sharing their best stuff, and it gives you this illusion that everyone out there is like really just crushing life and like really just like living these outstanding lives, and it can make you feel shitty about yourself, so I think I've been personally just trying to stay away from that trap, and also trying to share that, like, man, like, I mess up a lot, and nothing is close to perfect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember if it was Seth Godin or someone else, just this interesting concept that I came across a while ago, just about the idea that we don't really know how to use social media yet. Like, it's still pretty new, and there's not like a real well-established etiquette around it, in terms of, so like, we get used to sharing the best things. We get used to sharing like the highlights, because sharing just mundane things might be boring, or so we all know people that share this, the best, like everything that they're doing is the best thing ever, or people that kind of overshare.
Right.
I think in time there'll be a little bit better balance there. We'll get a better sense of like what does that look like responsibly, in terms of like really sharing your life on social media and having some boundaries there. But it's still it's still in the works. We're still mentally trying to figure out how to integrate this into our interactions. So I think it is important to be, again, like have that like ability to check in and recognize what your boundaries are and when you need a break and when you need to step back from that, or how do you need to put up some blocks or insulate yourself from some of that stuff that can quickly pull you out of your balance just simply by like scrolling through your feed and seeing, oh my God, everyone else is killing life and I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's really good advice, I think, just to have some checks and balances and maybe be able to take a step back when you need to and fill that process out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, like, I don't know, at least where I see it, like, I would love to get to the point where we're using these platforms to make real connections like you and I have done. And continuing to grow these communities where we're leveraging the reach of social media, but being able to actually deepen relationships from this technology that does lend itself towards a decreased attention span. But if we can leverage it the right way, there's potential opportunity to really connect and bring people together. But I think it does start with being intentional about what your message is and what you're trying to share, and being real. Again, like you said, being real about the image that you're portraying. And for me, I just want to portray who I am. Not everything. I don't want to put everything out to the world, but the stuff that I do put out, I want it to be a clear representation of me, not just like this well-crafted version of me. I want to show more dimensions of myself so other people know, like, you can do that too. And that's much more interesting than the content and the social media persona that always looks good.
Yeah, of course. And I think people feel the authenticity when you're being authentic and people are drawn to it. That's cool. So why don't you, so I'll probably post this on my channel and, people are interested in you. What do you have going on right now? You mentioned to me that you're working on a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. Like the dots are connecting. I'm trying to I'm trying to just walk the path and go through the process that I'm trying to help other people with. So right now, it started with kind of the YouTube exposure, my channel Movement Parallels Life, and this brand that I'm building. But I've also been forming a community, the Free Mover community, after my Instagram handle. And I want to share more of my practice and how I approach practice, because to me it's all about movement freedom. So the Free Mover community is exploring practically based movements, natural movements, but taking this stuff and finding creative and expressive ways to train movements. And ideally, I just want to make a community for creatives and coaches to get some support on getting out of the box of exercise and start moving in ways that feel good. So for the creative people out there, you don't have to be stuck in the gym. I want to show them that you can just move your body and stay healthy for a lifetime. And for the coaches out there, I want them to know that they're not limited to the gym and the way of the typical route of the trainer. That there's more opportunity out there. And if you can just develop your practice and really start opening up and sharing your story, and bringing your personal values into your practice, then, there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of good, which I think that's why a lot of us are drawn to the fitness industry. So that's what the Free Mover community is. It's just a place where I can share my videos and my programming to help support people in getting out of the box and doing something different with their movement, because you should love your practice.
Yes, definitely, man. I recently put out a video talking about the same thing of just of when motivation lacks, there's a reason why motivation is lacking, right? And So you're trying to like search for these like motivation hacks, but really it's probably because you don't enjoy what you're doing, right? Like that's kind of obvious to me. It was never obvious in the past. I thought if I drank enough caffeine, if I did,
Yes.
you know, if I had the right music, like we were talking about. But once you start really enjoying your practice and making it like something that's, not just about the sets and the reps that you're doing, but about something that, man, like this is me. This is an expression of me, and this is enjoyable to me. Then like you don't need to rely on motivation. Then you just cultivate that practice inside you. I think that's why we really connected, is because you know, we're just two people that put a lot into our personal practices, and we're kind of walked the same path. That being, you know, coming from thinking fitness was a certain way, and then starting to get outside of that and having more fun with it, and and yeah, really cultivating that practice. And I really like connecting with people that just are really living it. You know what I mean? Not just talking about it, but doing shit that they're talking about.
Yeah, that integration piece is huge, and you know, it's a thing that I know that I can share on a technical level. That, you know, before, maybe my options back in the day were a little bit more limited. I say I only had one speed with my training. That was crazy. Like it was always like just going hard every single day. But I learned that was just, you know, a small part of the spectrum, and that within this full spectrum of movement, there's the hard style, yeah, but there's the soft style as well, and it's all part of the spectrum of movement, and we gotta embrace all of it. So on a technical level, we can show people how, if you're not feeling motivated on a given day, or, you know, you're not high energy, then you can still practice and you can still enjoy movement, just a different part of the spectrum. And seeing what that translates to in terms of real world practice is kind of what I love to share through my videos. And it's also nice to get into, you know, some of the deeper stuff with these conversations, and kind of get into the philosophy of it. So this is like, you know, having this chance to do this is great.
Yeah. It's great. For people interested in the free mover project, where are you pointing them to?
They should just go to my website, www.movementparallelslife.com. That'll be a host of links there to some of my content, and people can click on the link for my free mover community, hosting that over on Patreon right now. But yeah, if they just go to my website, it's a good place to get all the information on what I'm about.
Cool, yeah. And of course, check out your YouTube channel as well. It's funny, I was just thinking the other day, like, I had actually used, so like a lot of your hanging videos to send to online clients that I had, and then we kind of linked up through Instagram, and then I looked at your YouTube and I was like, oh shit, like this is the guy who I've been like using his videos for reference for clients. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. So yeah, it's just gotta share the knowledge, share good movement, and you know, and I think we both understand that that's a piece of it. These are stepping stones to get to some bigger stuff. And it's all fitting together. Like I said, the dots are starting to connect between the movement and the training, and just living the good life, man.
Living the good life. Yeah, I like that. All right, cool. That's I think that's good.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Once again, you can check out Kellen's YouTube channel and some other links in the description. If you want to sign up for one of my free programs, links in the description. Last thing I'll leave you with, get some barefoot walking on a trail in nature. As always, I'll see you in the next one.